Sometimes you come across stories that almost become too good to be true, and in this case it turned out to be one of the greatest hoaxes of all time, that of the Cottingley Fairies. The curious tale of the Cottingley Fairies begins in the summer of 1917 when 9-year-old Frances Griffiths and her mother returned to England from South Africa to stay with their cousin Polly and Arthur Wright and 16-year-old daughter Elsie. Frances and Elsie soon struck up a strong friendship. At the bottom of Frances' garden, the Cottingley Beck flowed, and it was surrounded by trees. This became a great place for the girls to explore. Often the two girls would come home wet and untidy, and on asking them what they had been doing and why they were so wet, they would say that they had been to see the fairies. Elsie's father was a keen amateur photographer, and she asked her father if she could use his camera so that she could take a photograph of the fairies to prove their existence. Soon the girls returned, and when the photograph was developed, it showed Frances with the winged dancing fairies. Elsie had a keen interest in photography and retouching photos, as well as a talent for art. This soon aroused the suspicion of her father, and in September of the same year, another photo was taken, this time of Elsie holding out her hand to a gnome-like winged figure. Arthur, Elsie's father, was still unconvinced, but he had no idea how it had been done. He was to be proven right decades later. Elsie's mother, Polly, was interested in the Theosophical Society and took the photographs to a meeting in Bradford. The lecture this evening happened to be on the existence of fairies and fairy life. One of the senior members was Edward Gardner, who took this opportunity to promote the important message of the Theosophical Society, that humankind was undergoing a process of transformation which would lead to the perfection of the species. Gardner claimed that the images were supernatural proof of metaphysical changes that were happening. The photographs were examined by Howard Snelling, a photographic expert who claimed that they were authentic images of what was in front of the camera, avoiding to validate them as images of fairies. Gardner used the images in his lectures and later had prints created to sell afterwards. Having appeared in a spiritualist magazine, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, a keen spiritualist himself, asked if he could have permission to write a piece on the fairies for the Strand magazine, 1920 Christmas edition. He also had several experts look over the photographs before publishing them in a magazine. Conan Doyle said if proven real it would mark an epoch in human thought, and argued that after carefully going into every possible source of error, a strong cast had been built into their veracity. Following publication in Britain, the article was published in Australia and America. The images sparked worldwide notoriety and fierce debate. It said that Conan Doyle bought the girls their own camera so that they could take more images. Conan Doyle's belief in the fairies remained a mystery. He had been taken in by the Piltdown Man mystery, which was revealed to be a fake, but not until after his death. So did he go to his grave believing in fairies? During the 1920s to 1930s, fairies, gnomes and other supernatural creatures became popular subjects for the mass market, including prints, pottery and ornaments. Belief in the Cottingley Fairies continued on until the 1980s. The images would often come under scrutiny, and during this time Geoffrey Crowley, the editor of the British Journal of Photography, undertook a major investigation concluding that they were fakes. Elsie and Frances were both still alive in 1980. It wasn't until 1983 that Elsie finally confessed to the hoax, which had started out as a very clever stage-managed bit of fun, which had got seriously out of hand. The Cottingley Fairies were fakes. Beautifully drawn images of fairies created by Elsie and staged and photographed by both girls. They had been copied from images in the Princess Mary gift book, published in 1914, and then wings added to them, held upright with hat pins. There were more fairy images produced, with the final one, Fairies and Their Sunbath, in 1920. Speaking to the BBC in 1983, Francis Griffiths said, "I never even thought of it being a fraud. It was just Elsie and I having a bit of fun." People would often say, "Don't you feel ashamed that you made so many people look like fools for believing in you?" To this she replied, "No, because they wanted to believe." Frances maintained all her life that the fifth and final image, Fairies and Their Sunbath, showed real fairies and not fakes. Either way, it proves that the power of belief can still hold true even to some of the most sceptical of minds, and proves that over time history will come to its own conclusions. And after all, as I've mentioned many a time, it's because of that history really does matter.